Hey there, everyone. This is Dan from the Strengths Coach Tutor. Today, I'm going to talk about what you should do before you start studying for the NSCA CSCS exam. So let's go ahead and get started. So I want to preface this video by first saying I think this is incredibly important. First and foremost is that if you do not have an exercise science related background, or you've been out of school for a long period of time, and you're just starting this journey in terms of trying to prepare and study for the NSCA CSCS exam, I think this is even more important for you to do with what I'm about to say. If you are, you're a college senior or you just graduated and you're fresh out of your exercise science undergraduate program, you're going to have that easiest transition into taking this exam. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't do what I'm about to recommend, but you're more likely to say, I just went to school for so long. The last thing I want to do is do what I'm about to say, which is understandable. But I think it'll still help you and make your time as effective as it can be, because the last thing any of us want to do is have to retake the exam, right? And if you have, if you've taken one or two attempts and you failed and you're trying to retake it, you don't want to keep going down this path, right? How do you break up this cycle? And I think what I'm about to share with you is really pivotal, I think, in your transformation in terms of trying to pass this NSCA CSCS exam. All right. So something I want to advocate for all of you guys is to, not necessarily focus on what we're trying to study, right? We all know that we need to read the textbook and make sure we understand these certain topics, tables, and charts. Like, that's honestly the easy part. That's straightforward. But what we sometimes don't really develop and what we overlook before we start studying is how good are we as a student, right? And I think that's what we actually need to emphasize before we even start studying for this exam, because it is a lot of content, especially for those of you without the exercise science or related degree programs or experience, if you will. This is going to be significantly harder for you. And I think it's really important for you to understand and learn how to be a good student, so that way you're using your time as effectively as possible. And what do I mean by becoming a good student? And again, this applies to anyone studying for the exam, is that, how are you learning this material? What's your approach? Are you just skimming the textbook, hoping that, you glance at, you saw something in textbook and you hope that when you go into the exam itself, you just kind of, that clicked and I'm going to remember it, right? That method doesn't necessarily always work. And I see a lot of students doing that, where they just read and reread, and they think that's going to be, enough to pass. But this reading needs to be a little bit more of an active process rather than passive process. And then what I mean by active is that I'm big on delayed recall, or not necessarily memorization, but what I mean by that is, you're reading something and you're looking at a table or a chart, and you need to, understand that concept and be able to teach that concept to someone else. So say if you're looking at a certain table, you read over it several times, maybe you try and repeat it in your head without looking, and then you move on, you read through several other topics, but then you test yourself later on. You're like, okay, can I remember that first topic that I looked at? Can I remember that first table and recall everything? Am I able to then even forget about even recalling it, but then also able to teach it to someone else in and out, like knowing it like the back of my hand, so to speak, right? And unfortunately, this is things that even in elementary, middle, and high school, they don't teach us to do. They just accept the fact that some students are just good students and some students are just bad students. Like, that's not the case. And if you feel like you fit into that category of bad students, you need to remove that limitation on yourself, because you can certainly surpass those limitations that others have set on you, because you do not need to stay like that for the rest of your life. And a resource that I think anyone studying for this exam anyone would find valuable is the book Limitless by Jim Quick. And I actually listened to audiobook version, but you could listen to the audiobook or, get the paperback version, whatever it is. And what he emphasizes is really teaching us how to learn better and more effectively. And I highly, highly recommend reading the book or listening to the audiobook prior to studying for your exam. And kind of tying this all in here is that I think it'll make your time studying that much more effective. Ideally, you want to take as long to study. And again, ideally, you won't have to take it numerous attempts, or you won't have to worry about failing, because you're going to know this information in and out. So therefore, your studying is going to be more effective, and odds are you're going to have a higher chance of passing on your first attempt. Now, when you feel like you've become a good student and you've gone through all this material, it's really time to test yourself, to really put your knowledge to the test and see if you know what you know. So that's the time where you you do the NSCA's practice question bundle, which I do recommend doing because they're the ones that make the questions. Why wouldn't you buy their questions, right? You want to get a test for what they feel like. Again, there's plenty of other resources out there in terms of questions. Of course, you can always head to my website, thestrengthcoachtutor.com, and join our online classroom where we have over 300 practice questions, including a full-length exam and so forth. But that's beyond the point. I don't want to necessarily talk about that. But you have to prove to yourself before you take the exam that you are ready, right? If you're trying to become a good student and you've been doing all the studying, but then yet you're still not passing these practice quizzes, especially if you've taken these same practice quizzes again and again and you're not passing them or really not improving your score all that much, it's time to reevaluate. It's time to do some self-evaluation. Maybe go back to the Jim Quick's book, Limitless, and do some reflecting. See what you can do better as a student, rather than saying like, I don't know what else to go. I don't know where else to do. Like, granted, the majority of the information you need to know to pass this exam is in the textbook. Granted, it doesn't teach you everything, especially in terms of how to do some certain math equations and so forth, and anatomy and whatnot. But beyond that, you really do some self-reflecting and see what you can do in terms of holding yourself, in terms of regulating your self-discipline, to hold yourself to a really high standard, to be the best student that you could possibly be, and to make yourself proud, to know that you really put in 100% effort that you have to make sure you're as prepared as possible going into that exam. All right. So you need to, just don't tell yourself, oh yeah, I'm ready. You need to prove to yourself that you're ready to take this exam. And I think that all begins with by first becoming a good student. All right. And to finish this all in here together is that this is not a quick fix process. Now, granted, the student that's just coming out of their undergrad exercise science program, they were a really good student, they had like above a 3.5 GPA and so forth, odds are they're probably going to be okay in terms of trying to pass this exam on their first attempt. But maybe you weren't such a hot student in undergrad, or you don't have this exercise science or other related field degree. It's going to take some time. You have a much larger learning curve to go through. So you have to be patient with yourself. Granted, yes, do you want to pass this thing as quickly as possible and just get it over with? Of course, who wouldn't want to, study for less time and pass earlier? But this is a process. You're trying to fit in a whole college degree's worth of information in a few months. And if you weren't a good student in the past, I don't know what's going to make you think that you can magically learn all this information like that and think you can pass this exam. In reality, it's just not the way it works. Focus on becoming a good student, master the material, be able to apply it, and test yourself, prove to yourself that you're ready first, and then go ahead and take that exam. If it takes time, it takes time. But at the end of the day, it's you passing the exam. And again, if you guys need help, you can always head to thestrengthcoachtutor.com, where I offer individualized tutoring and my online classroom as well to help you guys pass the exam. But anyways, guys, I hope you guys found this useful. Again, the book I was referencing is called Limitless by Jim Quick, and you spell his last name Kwik. I have no affiliation or relationship at all with Jim Quick. I just happened to listen to the audiobook, and I thought all of my students who are studying for the NSCA CSCS exam could benefit from his knowledge and experience and the tools that he shares with all of us. All right, guys, again, thank you guys for watching. I'm Dan from the Strength Coach Tutor, and I'll see you guys real soon. See you later.